Alright, how's it going everybody? So in this video we will be creating a few more details for our dumpster here, modeling the lid as well as a little front handle like the little lock bar that they use there, and the hinges as well. So let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start from where we left off with our nice little dumpster all neatly textured. We're going to hit Shift A, bring in a cube. We're going to bring it up on the Z axis, again making sure that our transform pivot point here is set to median point. If you start to see it do some weird stuff as you scale it, it's likely that it's still set to 3D cursor. So we're going to scale this down on the Z about as far as it'll let us go. Not that far, but about right there. Bring it over on the X. We're going to scale in a little bit on the X. That's probably pretty good. Let's bring it down. Actually, looks like we might want to scale it out just a tiny little bit. We want this right edge here to kind of be at least centered or just kind of overlapping the inside edge of this lip here, right? So that you don't have like this gap, like where you're able to see inside of the dumpster from the side here. We want it to neatly fill the whole top, right? And with that as well, we want this left edge here to be just to the right. Could even be lined up with this blue line. Right about there should be good. Let's just make sure everything's fine. Yep. Hit 3 on the number pad to go into right orthographic. We're going to scale down some more on the Z. Something like that should be good. And then we're going to scale it out a little bit on the Y axis. Right about there should be good. Okay, and before we move on with the lid, we're going to hide it temporarily, select our dumpster, tab into edit mode, we can hit Z and then go over to solid. If the texture is disorienting to look at for this next part, we're going to hit 1 to go to vertice select, and we're going to select all 4 of these upper inside vertices all the way around. We're just going to select that one, holding shift as we continue to make selections, that one, and then we'll hit F to fill. And then we're just going to keep that temporarily filled for a little while. And then let's unhide. You can either click that eyeball up there or hit Alt-H. Unhide our lid. Tab into edit mode. We're going to hit Control-R to make some loop cuts across the top here. We're going to mouse wheel up, and we're going to make about 6 cuts. Left click to confirm. Right click to lock it in. Hit 3 to go face select and just grab all of these top faces. Now what we want to do is hit I and then I again, and then move your mouse in and you'll see the faces start to separate here. And then if you hold control and move the mouse away, you'll see them start to rise up. Just like that. And you can, if you'd like, you can click this little drop down over here and you can dial these numbers in. I'm particular about a lot of these things, so I'm going to dial them in to some precise amounts here. There we go. Something like that's pretty good. Then we're going to add in some more loop cuts going the opposite way. We're going to Control R, mouse wheel up. We're going to put in 3 cuts, left click to confirm, right click to lock it in. And then 2 for edge select. We're going to take these top edges, ignoring the edge, these little edges in the valley. We just want these top ones. We're going to hit 3 on the number pad to go into right orthographic, then G, then Z. We're going to bring that up right about there. Then we're going to take the same top edges for the front and back edge loops we created. And same thing, right orthographic view, and we're going to bring that up, but just not quite as far. Something like that seems good. Then in front orthographic, we're going to Control R to add in 2 loop cuts right here, right around the base. Left click, right click to lock it in, and we're going to take these 2 faces here. And what we're going to do is go up to our transform pivot here and switch that to individual origins. Before I do so, I will show you why we're going to do that. So if we don't do that and we hit E to extrude and scale on the X, we get this kind of a funky system going on. We don't want that. So what we do is we go to individual origins so that they will scale relative to themselves. So we E to extrude, S to scale on the X, just like that. We bring it in. Nice, perfect. And then we're going to hit G, then Y, slide that in. I'm going to dial mine in to something to the tune of 0.04. Enough depth, you know, that someone could realistically stick their meaty little fingers in there and get a grip. Seems pretty good like that. I like it. All right. Next step, what we're going to do is we're going to come up here to, first of all, actually, let's make sure we go back to median point. And we're going to come up here to this little doodad here. And this is our snapping feature, you know, our little snapping tool. And that is basically, you know, when you grab something and you move and you're holding control, that's this, you know, how it snaps by increments rather than free-form movement. That's this whole thing. We can switch it from moving by increments to specific things. We're going to select to face, right? Keep it at closest, and we're going to select align rotation to target. So what this is going to help us do is, as we move it around holding control, we're going to kind of float it around the top face of this dumpster here. And that should snap our bottom face of this to the top face of the dumpster and also match the rotation. So it's a nice, you know, nice and flush. So kind of hold, push G and hold control and just kind of slide it around, you know, as long as it doesn't look like that and as long as it's not like, you know, that or, you know, the other one that's not showing up now where it's kind of like that inside of it. Pretty much as long as it's like this, it should be good. And it's kind of hard at this angle to really see it. But if we hit G and you see we're moving around like this, as soon as we hit control, it should snap because it's relative to like where your mouse is at. So I like to do it with the mouse kind of right around the center, this origin point of the object. Hit G, then hit control, and it should line it up right there. It doesn't matter where it's positioned at, we can correct that. But just as long as it seems like it's like this, not like that, not like, you know, all that other crazy stuff, just kind of get it in there like this. Left click to lock that baby in, and we can go to right orthographic to kind of get a good view here. It looks like we're not exactly aligned, but I think that is because, let's go ahead and hide the lid momentarily. Select the dumpster, tab for edit mode, and let's go to right orthographic. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of fix this edge here. We want this edge to kind of be nice and flat. And we're going to go into wireframe. I didn't explain this before, but basically one of the additions to being in wireframe, aside from the benefit of being able to kind of visualize these edges and line them up with like nice x-ray vision, if we're in vertice select or any selection, really, but we're going to use vertice select, there's this vertice here, and if I just click to select, like especially like if I was in solid mode and I clicked that, or I could even box select like that, it's only going to select this vertice here. Whereas if I were in wireframe and I box select like that, it's going to select anything that's behind this vertice as well. So it's selected this vertice as well as the one that matches its, you know, it's perfectly, they're overlapped as far as their position on the Z and Y axes. And so if I go into solid and I show you now, see we've selected both of those. So just in case anyone was ever curious, that's why we do that. So we're going to hit G, then Z, and we can hold shift to kind of slowly bring that down and just kind of roughly line it up with that edge. Then we're going to come down to the front here. Same thing, box select over this vertice here, or these vertices. You just can't see both of them obviously because they're perfectly overlapped, and just bring that up on the Z to roughly line it up with that edge. There we go. So now we can tab back into object mode, hit Alt-H to unhide our lid. Let me go into right orthographic view. Yeah, and we're going to want to basically redo that. Just, you know, hit G, snap, and it should automatically just kind of fix itself there. Let's give it a look. Yep, see, perfect. That corner isn't jutting inside of the dumpster. Everything looks perfect. So we're going to switch our snap to back to increment, and we're going to come over here, and if we hit G then Y, you'll see this green line there, and that kind of shows, you know, that's the line, you know, that your mesh or object will be moving along. And when you hit Y once, this is the global Y. So it's like representative of this here. These, you know, the grid lines that you see that represent the different axes, right? But if we hit G and then we hit Y, Y, right? So double tap Y, we're moving along our object's local Y, which basically, in other words, takes into account the object's rotation. And that's what we want, so that we don't screw up our, our alignment to this face here. And we're just going to zoom in a little bit, hit G, Y, 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 and just slide it up so it kind of, like this edge, kind of matches that edge. Looking pretty good there. 1 on the number pad to go into front orthographic, and we will move it back out on the X. Kind of zoom in here a little bit. I'm gonna line it back up a little bit with that blue line, and that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. Awesome. Okay. Sweet deal. I like it. Okay. So now we'll hit Shift A, bring in a cylinder, hit 1, and then we're going to rotate that 90 degrees. Bring it up on the Z, scale it down, about as far as it'll let us scale. Right orthographic, we'll bring it back on the Y, and then we're going to bring it down on the Z. Perfect. And one more thing, we can actually, I forgot, we don't want to line that edge up. What we want to do is hit G, then Y, Y, and we're going to slide this forward about yay far is fine. And actually what we want to do, it looks a little better, a little bit more detail here, is we're going to grab these bottom faces here, 3 on the number pad, and we're going to zoom in a little bit so we can get a good view of this edge here, and we're going to hit E to extrude, and it's already going to be moving along that local axis for us. And then we're just going to slide it up and align it with that edge. Close enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. Then what we can do is 2 for edge select and just grab these top edges here. Back into right orthographic, hit G, then Z, and we'll just kind of lower this down a little bit. That seems fair. Yeah, something like that's pretty good. Yeah, I like it. Anyway, back in object mode, grab our cylinder here. We'll just scale this down a good bit. Bring it down on the Z, bring it over on the Y. I'll scale it down a little bit more. We're just gonna bring it in here, about this close for now. Tab into edit mode, and in right orthographic, we'll go into wireframe. Make sure you hit 3 for face select. Also, if you didn't know, you have the 3 different options up here for vertice, edge, and face select. Or you can just hit 1, 2, or 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to just kind of roughly box select somewhere in this region. Go back into solid, and we only want 6 faces. So let's get rid of this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's perfect. Just want 6 faces, kind of roughly like evenly on a side. It doesn't have to be, but you know, I like to because it just makes things a lot simpler. We're going to extrude on the Y. Bring this out about this far seems good. Then we're going to hit, with these faces still selected, we'll hit scale on the Y, 0. Hit enter. That just flattens that out nicely for us. I like that. That looks good. Okay, so back in object mode, we're just going to bring this over, and we will rotate this down a little bit. We're going to scale it up. Basically what I'm looking for here is we're going to try to make this face, this squared edge here, roughly about the same length and size of this edge here. It doesn't have to be perfect, just kind of, you know, more or less. I feel like it makes for the right sizing by the end. Like, you know, it's hard to kind of really determine the size of like the micro details of things. You know, when you're zoomed in, it's like, you know, it looks almost too big where you're like, oh man, should I make this thing smaller? Should I scale it down? And then you zoom out and you're like, oh my goodness, it's way smaller than I thought. Like, oh no. I hate working with the very tiny details on things. So we're just going to freeform this one, holding shift as we rotate, hitting G to kind of slide it back in. And again, this part doesn't need to be perfect. We can overlap it Doesn't really matter. Just kind of get it in there. You could square it up so it's like maybe somewhere in the middle between this top and bottom edge of this piece. You could also, you know, scale it up some more to try to get it a little bit more even, but I'm happy with this. I think this is fine. Again, it's so small, it's not, it's, you know, and it's on the back of the dumpster. It is what it is. So yeah, I think that looks pretty good though. Hit 7 to go into top orthographic, and hit G, then X, and we're gonna bring this over. Let's zoom in a little bit. We can bring it in a little bit more on the X, maybe something like that. That seems pretty good. We don't have to do this part, it doesn't really matter, but I'm gonna do it. We're gonna select that face and this face, and we're gonna hit I. Just kind of drag that in a little bit. I'm gonna dial it in to like a 0.3. I think that seems pretty good. Yeah, I like that. Then we're just gonna hit X and delete those faces. We're not gonna fill anything, we'll just leave it as is. Then we're gonna select that in object mode and hit Shift D to duplicate, then X to move it along the X axis, and we're just going to continue to do that. Shift D, X, move it along the X axis. One more time, Shift D, then X, and slide that roughly right about there somewhere. And then we can, you know, kind of even these up a little bit. Make the spacing a little better. Bring it in like that. Bring this, whoops, don't delete. Don't do that. Come on. And bring that out. Something like that seems good. It seems about right. Perfect. Now what we can do is we can grab all 4 of these, holding Shift, and then Control J to join them all together. That looks pretty good. I like it. We could even, if we wanted, but we don't have to, we could scale them a little bit more. It's up to you. I think this is fine though. They don't need to be too terribly big, but just for the sake of it, in case anyone's curious as to what I'm talking about, we'll just scale it up specifically just on the Z axis because I don't want them getting too much more wide. So let's go into right orthographically, hit scale on the Z, and just kind of bring that out a little bit more. Something like that seems good. Bring this down and over here. Adjust the rotation. Again, holding Shift for nice, slow little increments here. Something like that's fine. Yeah, I think that looks a little bit better. Yeah, good. Okay. So now what we want to do is we will select our lid. We'll come up here to the top, select 3D cursor for our transform pivot point. We'll hit Shift D, scale, right? S to scale, X -1, hit enter. Then do the same thing for these little hinge pieces that we made. Shift D, scale, X -1, enter. Perfect. Nice. That looks good. I like it. Now we'll hit Shift A, add in a cylinder. 1 on the number pad to go into front orthographic. We're going to rotate that 90 degrees, bring it up on the Z. And we're not going to move this on the X at all. We're going to try to keep movement for now on just the Z and the Y. But we're going to bring it up on the Z. Whoops, make sure we switch back to medium point for our transform pivot point. Scale that down about as far as it'll go, right about there. 3 on the number pad to go into right orthographic. We're going to bring it back on the Y. Scale it down a good bit more, bring it down on the Z, and we can zoom in, bring it in on the Y, bring it up on the Z, something like that, and then we're going to just scale that down. That might have been a little bit much, but we'll just try to center it up into this gap here. Whoops. Center it in there. Scale it out. Yes, that's the problem with me having scaled on the Z. I'm going to scale out a little funky here. Doesn't matter though. We can overlap it a little bit. It really honestly doesn't matter. In fact, I'll just do that. Like, this is why I was saying we didn't need to delete these faces, because it really, for things like this, it doesn't matter. Like, probably putting in more detail than is necessary for something so small. You could just allow this piece that we're using, this is going to be the bar, right, that the lid is going to like rotate along. You could just like scale it out like we're about to now, and this is why we didn't want to move it on the X, because right now it's nice and centered. So we're going to get a nice, we can hit Control 1 to go into back orthographic view. We can just hit S, X, scale it out on the X. And it's taking its sweet time getting there. It's a long way to scale, but I'm just going to scale it out pretty wild. Something right in there. We'll zoom in. Scale on the X. Whoops. Bring it in a little bit. It's a little much. Something like that seems fair. But yeah, so that way we know it's going to be evenly distributed on both sides, and you don't have, like, as you're scaling, this side's further out than that side, and then you have to grab it, move it this way, then scale, and it's just this kind of like back and forth thing, trying to get that nice even distribution there. That's the beauty of why we haven't, or like one of the beautiful things about how we haven't moved this dumpster anywhere along the X. It's nice and centered. So anyway, now that that's done, that is it for that piece. But yeah, see, we you know, we just jut this little bar through those things, and you wouldn't be able to tell that we didn't delete a face there. It would look totally fine. But anyway, that's good enough for now. Doesn't have to be crazy. I mean, you could get really fancy with the detail of these hinges and actually, you know, like create a face here to extrude out. You could have done even a better extrusion here coming off of the cylinder to create a little better looking kind of hinge altogether. But I figure, you know, it's such a small piece that, like, this is going to look good no matter what. So moving on now, we're going to hit Shift A and bring in a circle. We'll hit G, then Z, bring it up on the Z, tab into edit mode, hit A to select everything if it isn't already, hit F to fill, and then we're going to hit 1 on the number pad, and E to extrude on the Z, and just kind of bring it up. That's probably a bit much, but we'll keep it there for now. We can adjust as we go. Tab into object mode. Whoops. And front orthographic, rotate 90 degrees this way. And we're going to bring it over here. And bring it down right about here. Scale it way down. 3 on the number pad. Bring it forward on the Y. Bring it down a little bit on the Z. And we can just scale this down some more. Probably even scale a little bit more. I think that's probably pretty good, though. Let's check out material preview so I can get a better... Yeah, that's probably pretty good. I think so. Okay. So now we're going to move it over on the X. Get it to kind of touch up against the dumpster here. Doesn't have to be perfectly on the money, but close. Okay, whoops. Before we go back into edit with it selected in object mode, we are going to Shift D to duplicate, and we're going to just move this out on the X, and then we can hit H to hide that. And then with it selected, tab into edit mode, 3 on the number pad to go into right orthographic. We're going to go wireframe, 1 to go into vertice select, and we're going to want to grab basically this bottom half of vertices here. So right across the middle here and all the way down. Just box select all of those vertices. Let's go back into solid or material preview, whatever your preference. And we're just going to hit G, then Z, and just kind of bring this down. We'll start with somewhere in this region. And as a way to test to see if it's a, you know, reasonable, realistic looking length, we can tab back into object mode, hit rotate, and just kind of swing it, whoops, swing it up this way. That looks pretty good. We could even bring it up just a tiny little bit, maybe something like that. Let's give that a shot. Let's see if that works out pretty good. I think that's fair. Maybe just bring it down like one more, something like that. Okay. Doesn't need to be perfect. I don't know if any, you know, should you eventually want to actually animate that, you know, where this little, you know, the bar swings up to lock the lid, you know, so people aren't digging around in the trash. Seems like such a weird, a weird thing, but whatever. All right, so We're going to unhide that nice little circle we made. In fact, actually, let me just double check. Am I satisfied with the thickness? I think so. I think that is a decent level of thickness. And in fact, actually, if anything, I'm almost thinking we could grab this and scale it on the Y. Just make it a little bit more narrow, something like that. Yeah, so then we'll grab our circle that we duplicated here and we'll just scale this down to match somewhere right in here. Bring it up a little bit on the Z. Right in there seems good. Okay. And we're going to bring this over on the X and get it to just kind of meet up right up against this one here. Okay. Tab into edit mode with this front face selected. We're going to hit E to extrude, S to scale, and we're going to bring it in about... right about there is fine. Yeah, that's good. And one more time, E to extrude, S to scale, bring it in one more little point like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add in some loop cuts around this ring of faces right here. So we're going to hit Control R, and we want to mouse over one of these edges, one of these like vertically, you know, moving edges here, and that seems to get it where we want. And then we're going to mouse wheel up once because we want 2 loop cuts. Left click to confirm selection, right click to lock it into place. And now we're going to go into face select mode, and again, for some reason, if you were to hit or hold Alt and left click this face, it grabs this loop of faces. We don't want that. We want to grab this inner ring of faces. So just hold Alt and left click this edge. You know, any one of these like vertical edges right here. For some reason, that seems to get what we want right there. Very good. Okay. Actually, hold on. Let me just make sure. Yeah, I think that's what we wanted. Yep. Okay. So we are going to go into wireframe mode just to get a little visual aid here. And we're going to hit G on the X and bring it in pretty far. Something like that, maybe even a little further. Right about there. Not quite all the way to the other end of it. Just something like that. That looks pretty good. Yeah, I like that. Okay. So now we can select that little ring there. Go into wireframe, tab into edit mode. Just kind of take a look here for a second. Yeah, that'll be all right. Yeah, okay. So we'll select, oh wait, first of all, I was going to join these, but first what we want to do is we're going to grab this elongated piece we made and just rotate it out like a tiny little bit, you know, just so it's, whoops, if I could figure out how to do a tiny little bit here. Maybe something like that. In fact, actually, before we rotate it, we could even select both of these and just kind of bring it out more or something like that. There we go, and then rotate it out. So it's somewhere right there. That seems good. Okay, so now we can grab this circle, little divot, rivet, whatever they call those things that we made here. Select this elongated little handle we made and hit Control J to join. And in front orthographic, although, well, that's not necessary, but we can go up here to our transform pivot point, select 3D cursor, hit Shift D to duplicate, S, X, -1, enter. Perfect. Let's bring that transform pivot point back to median point, and we are set to go with our little lock bar. So we'll hit Shift A, bring in a cylinder, front orthographic, rotate 90 degrees. I'm going to bring it up on the Z. Don't have to go that far. We're going to scale it down as much as it'll let us. Bring it forward on the Y, bring it back down on the Z. I'm going to scale that sucker down some more, bring it in over here, and we can kind of just gauge it by this. Let's get it somewhere in this realm, center it up in here, we can bring it up a little higher, something like that seems pretty fair to me. Okay, and again, we didn't move this piece on the X, so it should scale out on the X nice and evenly. Just gonna All that wrist action. Just gonna scale this baby way out. Overlap on each end a little bit. Something like that should be good. Maybe a little further. That should be good. Whoops. Get a good look at it. Okay. Yeah. That seems pretty good. Alright, well that's going to be a wrap on this one. I had originally intended on getting the wheels done in this video as well, but it started to run on a little long, so I guess we'll just have to look forward to that next time. Whatever the case, I hope that it was helpful, I hope that it was educational, I hope it was informational. Overall, I hope you enjoyed. But anyways, that's going to be enough out of me, so thank you very much.